What do Twinkies, cockroaches, and an old Akai reel-to-reel have in common? The answer? Longevity. They can supposedly survive the apocalypse. While that might be a myth for the Twinkies and the cockroaches, I suspect it might actually be true for the Akai reel-to-reel. And it's not just because it's heavy enough to anchor a yacht. I'll explain why, but first, I need you to like and subscribe. Did you do it? I'm trusting you. All right, let's do this. This heavy monster is the Akai GX-225D Reel-to-Reel tape recorder. It's from a line of open reel tape recorders from the early 1970s, which are defined by a special type of head made from an unusual material, glass. And this one has several other features as well. Let's talk about it. Before I get into the glass thing, this is another of the machines I managed to pick up at a recent estate sale. The Panasonic 8-track from a month ago, that was another one. Go check that video out if you haven't already. That machine was completely intact, didn't require any repairs. This one, I had to mess with it a little bit. It would start up fine, but then as you would play it, it would slow down and eventually come to a stop, like the batteries were dying. But the motor was still running, and the counter would still move. And it doesn't use batteries, so that was odd. I assumed the belts were just screwy. That's pretty normal fare, but strangely, the counter belt was fine. And the main belt was sort of loose, but not anywhere near as bad as I've seen them. But when I was fiddling with the pinch roller, I noticed it took a lot of effort to turn it. That thing should spin freely. And the same thing was happening with the counter pulley. The nice thing about large old equipment like this is it's really easy to fix because you can actually reach things without having to pull it all apart. I swapped out the main belt with a new one since I already had it, but what actually fixed the problem was just a little bit of Bernina sewing machine oil. I unscrewed the pinch roller cover, cleaned the roller and the shaft that it spun on, then oiled it and put it back. It spun like a skateboard wheel. A little WD-40 on the counter and that thing worked too. Easy peasy. For these machines, there are some transistors made by Hitachi with black leads that tend to corrode, so it's recommended that you swap those out too, but for the time being, and thanks to living in this blistering dry desert, I didn't have to do that. I probably will later though. Moving on to what makes this machine so interesting to me, the record and playback heads are made of glass, actual clear glass, and they sparkle like the jewels of Fëanor. Akai claims that the glass heads can withstand 150,000 hours of continuous playback without wear. For reference, that's 17.5 years. Compare that to the typical steel heads, which get 3,000 to 4,000, and that's pretty impressive, especially when you consider the fact that it's iron oxide being continuously rubbed against the surface of the head for 17 years, and it stays shiny. I feel like that warrants a playback demo, don't you? In this case, I'm going to set up a microphone and record a few passages from the most important book ever written, and you can listen to how it sounds. Jules and another friend from the acting school, Chicago George, came into the apartment one morning in a frenzied state while I was just waking up. Jules had told George to slow down and pull up next to a woman walking down the sidewalk. George thought Jules must know her. As they came up beside her, Jules screamed at him to hit the gas just as he reached out and grabbed her purse. They sped off, pulling the woman over in their wake. Now they were freaking out as to whether or not someone had taken down their license plate. This was all too much for me. A little bit of a difference there, yeah? Now that we've seen the demo, let's look a little closer at the machine itself because it is really, really 70s. The large tape reels aren't native to this machine, they're just what the guy had. They're attached to the spindles with these spring-loaded clips. The tables below are directly driven by their own motors. Between them is the tape speed selector and a mains frequency selector, set to 60 Hz because America. Above that is your 4-digit tape counter with a reset button. The heads are on the left under this cover/badge. Erase, record, and play. Then the capstan and pinch roller, the transport controls, and the pause lever. The start button releases the pause lever. To record, you have to press the record button and it'll allow you to flip the lever to record. I'll explain all the bits at the bottom too, but first I want to go over how to play a tape if you've never used an open reel tape machine like this. You'll start by placing a tape on the left table and an empty reel on the right one, then lock them in place. Start by giving yourself a little bit of tape. Now pay attention to the two curved slots with studs sticking out. One is a tensioner and the other is part of an automatic shutoff mechanism. The tape is threaded around this tensioner, down across this pulley, over the 3 heads. You don't need to remove the cover, I just did so you can see. Then you bring it up between the capstan and the pinch roller, over this stud, then over the shutoff lever, and up to the other reel. Threading the reel is the trickiest part. It's fiddly. I like to put a little crease in the tape to catch the slot in the take-up reel. I think it makes it easier. We're ignoring the little slot on this reel because most of them don't have that. Now spin the take-up reel a couple of times so the tape doesn't slip off. This also takes up the slack. And you're ready to go. The pause lever should have automatically engaged, so hit start and then you can flip the play lever. Gravy. Sometimes when we pick stuff like this up at estate sales, we manage to get the instruction manuals as well. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case with this unit. I could find free PDF downloads of the service manual, but the user manual cost money, at least at the time of researching. My luck, it'll be available for free when the video actually goes out and I will look like an idiot, as if I don't all the time anyway. But let's still go over the other functionality and setup as far as I could figure it out. If you've used a cassette recorder, most of this should be familiar. In the top right corner is your power button. This small switch will allow the machine to turn off entirely when the tape runs out instead of just stopping. It has an equalizer with 3 settings that correspond to the 3 tape speeds. I didn't notice much of a difference with it. Adjacent to it is the tape selector, which selects between SRT and normal. SRT stands for super range tape, which is a lot like type 2 or 3 cassette tape. Normal tape would be like type 1. We'll go into more details about that in a later video that I have planned, but not right now. You have separate 1/4-inch microphone inputs for the right and left channel, and next to that is the SOS button. SOS, you would think it would be Save Our Ship, some kind of beacon, right? But it actually stands for sound on sound. It's a little complicated, but it's basically the ability to record one track while listening to another. You could use it to record your voice over music, or you can use it to layer multiple recordings over one another if you're in a garage band in the 1980s. I feel like this topic deserves its very own video, so we're not going to really go deep into this. So we're just going to move on. The left and right channels each have their own VU meters and level input knobs. Above the VU meters are the forward and reverse buttons. These allow you to play both sides of the tape without having to remove and rethread it. It's a lot more convenient if you hit reverse before the tape gets all the way to the end. In particular because it has to be playing when you hit reverse or it won't actually change the direction. If you hit the reverse with it stopped, it doesn't respond to that and change the direction. You actually have to be playing when you hit the button. Finally, on the left you have your track selectors. During normal playback and recording, you want to keep it on stereo. The others are related to the sound on sound feature. You have a 1/4-inch stereo headphone jack and the monitor button. You want to keep it on source for recording and tape for playback. Then you have the noise reduction button. It works basically like Dolby. The back gives you the option of using RCA or 5-pin DIN connectors for input and playback, and the funny little lever in the middle selects the power input for your region with a thumb screw to lock it in place. Again, we have it switched to 60 Hz. That's all the main functionality. So that's it. Rather than my usual ending, I'd like to end this with some ambient sounds that this machine makes just for fun. And come back again, because the next video may or may not have something to do with Walkmans. So see you soon. Stay metal.